Welcome to a new episode of our podcast, Lead the Future, an unedited, honest conversation to change the conversation. I'm Arjan Visser, futurist and your host. Join me as I chat with my friend Darin Martin about authentic leadership transformation. Darin is a serial entrepreneur, always looking for new opportunities. His heart is to see leaders live the fullest life possible, starting with alignment of family and business life. Darin, welcome back to the podcast.
Hello, once again.
We had a really good ride last time. So let's
Yeah,
make part two.
let's do it. Let's see if we can get there.
Yeah, last time we talked about the importance of knowing who you are becoming in the tension of destination addiction. That's the term that you introduced to me. And let's unpack that one a little bit more. Destination addiction.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when that idea, when I first came across that idea, and I don't remember what I said last time, but it hit me immediately to the core of my being, as that accurately reflects a problem that I'm having. Is this addiction to the idea of arriving here? It's the arrival, it's the goal, it's the reaching of it, and it's not the process getting there. It's not the journey, it's not all of that stuff. For somebody who has this addiction to the destination, we understand that process and journey and all that stuff is part of it, but we lose sight of the importance of it. um, it gets overshadowed in our mind, by the importance of getting to the end.
Yeah, and when I was reflecting on it, what we talked about last time, I just realized that nearly everything around us literally screams that it's about the destination. The goal setting, the it is important, but it's made the important thing to do.
Mm.
Um, Destiny as something that you have to step into. Well, I think purpose is something you carry with you and you're expanding, so you don't have to arrive in it. But also think about what I would not say understand as a non-American citizen, but the American dream seems to me bringing so much pressure about getting somewhere, getting to a place, and it's not, you don't have a fulfilled life or happiness if you don't get there. So it feels a bit like a setup for disappointment. But don't
Yeah,
know.
that's because the people who are generally selling that idea, they're selling the dream. They have the story of how they arrived, and they're selling you their secret sauce for how to get there too. And everything is about getting there. And in my opinion, and I know it happens in my mind and in my heart, is the toxicity of comparison. Well, they're there and I'm not. They have this, I don't. I want that. They have arrived. They're at the destination. And so it's sexy to sell the dream of destination and destiny. People want that. People compare where they are and what they have to people who claim to have something else. I say claim because maybe they do, maybe they don't. I don't know. Maybe they're just trying to sell a course or something. Um, but it's to me, at least for me, comparison is a large part of what feeds destination addiction. Somebody's there and I'm not, and I want to be there.
Hmm. And that is so, if you could put it in one picture, that is the opposite of authentic leadership and authentic transformation. Because You cannot buy the course. You cannot buy the shortcut. You cannot buy the formula, because all those things are part of the how.
Mm,
And that's what you are developing as a pioneer, as a leader. With hindsight, you know the how, and you're mainly focused on where to do I want to go, what what is the reason, what is the end result. So in futurizing, you look a lot at the destination as that perspective vision thing, not as the dot on the horizon, but more on the perspective of the horizon,
mm,
not to get there. And at the same time, but what if you would be there?
mhm.
What would be that result? What would be that impact, that output? And then pull it from there into the now. So I already realized that it is not a perspective that you can just separate from anything, because it's entwined with so many things. But so it's not the destination that is the focus on destination that gives the problem. It's the addiction.
Yes. And I got to tell you, the first time when you introduced that idea to me, now I didn't have the language at that time of destination addiction, and so I had an internal dissonance of understanding what you're saying, but not understanding why what I'm thinking is different than what you're saying. Um, and I guess recently, and now it makes sense when you bring that idea back into the conversation for me of the destination is a focal point. It's about guidance. It's about taking all of this stuff and heading towards a place, and and not about what the place is, right? And so that's such that was such an important. I mean, it really kind of it broke my mindset. It kind of started a thing for me. It kind of broke that mindset of um, the difference between destination being focus point on the horizon that guides us, understanding that, like you said, well, if you got there, what would be different, and then to pull that into now, versus the idea of I'm here, destination is there, I have to get from here to there. Right? It's really big, different
Yeah,
paradigm.
it's a bit different, and I believe the key is in authenticity. If you
Mm,
take that element out, then you replace it by comparison. Uh, we had in another podcast a while back with Pete Savaggio, we talked about, at one end, your imagination is limitless.
mm,
So for you to imagine what it will look like and who you are becoming, there are no limits. At the other end, you can become anyone with inside the boundaries of your blueprint. You cannot become just anyone. And then we talked about it. What is the difference? Well, is it the external input? Based on the
mm,
comparison, I want to be the number one, but then we would all be Superman. In that
mm,
we get
mm,
into a fantasy character, an avatar, or is it authentically who we are called to be, created to be, and which makes us more happy? It's not a limitation, it's a boundary, and boundaries are there for freedom and safety and guidance, while limitations are just hindering us.
mm,
It's such a thin line, because when it
mm,
gets if we get you call it already toxicity. If we get a toxic mindset where we lose track on who we are becoming, and we take an image of who someone else is becoming, and probably that is a very fine-tuned sales pitch, so it's not even a real person, it's an avatar,
mm.
then we disconnect from who we are. We burn down anyway. It will be a burnout zone where we get into.
Speak truth, my friend. Yeah, what you're saying. That's 100%. And I guess I could say, I can say that because I feel like I've experienced that, like exactly what you're talking about. The comparison of myself versus the avatar. And I think that's probably a more accurate and probably a more, sorry, realistic or more common thing is people compare themselves to the idea of who they want to be. Maybe not so much, maybe somebody else represents that idea. But yeah, I think you're right, man. And I know for me, I look at who I am, where I am, what I'm dealing with, etc. And then I look at the guy, I go, yeah, but that's the guy that I should be. That I should be dealing it with these things with the way that guy is, that imaginary, that avatar version of myself. Um, and you're right, man. That is a slippery slope. It is a whirlpool down into the middle of losing track of yourself and getting caught up in all kinds of unhealthy and non-beneficial thought patterns.
I'm just wondering, like, is there a magic key that we stay looking at our ideal self, fullest version of ourselves based on our, let's call it our divine blueprint, to make the gap a bit bigger versus the expectation polished avatar? So is there
Mhm.
a magic key, or is it something that we actually cannot self control and we need others? I don't know. I'm just having a rant right now. Like,
Yeah, yeah. I generally don't tend to think in the realm of and I know you say the magic key, and I know you're not saying that like literally, like as in there's one thing that unlocks this and makes it easy for everybody, because life doesn't work that way. But to your question, I think the first time you and I talked, I mentioned the one of the disciplines being contemplation, and specifically, it is the discipline. So for me, when I'm getting lost in the weeds, when I'm getting drowned in the obstacles of life, it is the discipline to take the time to sit with no distractions and to go through the mental discipline of contemplating all of these things that I've built for myself. And so to me, contemplation is part of the answer, but there's a whole thing that you have to build up to get there, right? So when I'm in this time, when I've separated myself from the garbage that's happened throughout the day, and I'm there to calm down, to calm my thoughts, to remind myself these things that are important to me, to take a snapshot of where I am versus where I think I should be, to think about what were the things that I did today that did not uh, lead me in that direction. So that is something that I do for myself to help
yeah,
with that. My wife, on the other hand, she's an angel sent from heaven, and she absolutely helps me with that all the time, reminding when I'm lost up here, she comes in and she reminds me. So I think there's internal things we can do, and I think we absolutely need external people. External people. We need external forces like people. I hope they're
yeah.
external people.
External
um,
people, internal people. I
yeah.
get an image, but
So anyway, that's my thought on it.
no, yeah, I connect to that. You need reflection, but
Yes.
you also need feedback. But
Yes.
the word that came to mind listening to you is there needs to be a possibility for recalibration. So you know,
Daily. Yeah.
daily. Yeah, yeah. Micro, macro, but the
Hmm.
recalibration, like, and you could call it what's my purpose, or what's my dream. And with the dream, I mean, what's the big idea that I foresee as my calling?
Yeah.
um, what's my purpose, or even language, like what's the promise. We metaphorically talk about that we want to go to the promised land. So what is the promise? And that daily recalibration on your own, with your spouse, with your peers, is essential, because it is so easy to lose sight of your intrinsic motivation and be extrinsic motivated. And then you go, like, the external expectation, the external motivation, from people, culture, society, um, family, career paths, whatever the reason is, can be, I would say, like, they are the external screaming voices versus that soft whispering internal voice, which
Yeah.
is, of course, my spirit life, how I'm
Yeah.
connected to my source of life. And that, how can I stay on track? Well, it comes down to, do I hear the whispering voice on the inside? Well, at in the Netherlands, we do a lot of train traveling.
Mhm.
So, just imagine you're in that loud, busy station hall. Can I still hear that whispering voice that keeps me on track? Um, and of course, that's where your peers and definitely your spouse come in. They know your track.
Well, yeah, and to your point, that idea of hearing that small, still voice, that whispering voice in the midst, and to what you were alluding to with the train station, in the midst of 1,000 voices out there, all trying to tell you who you are, what you should be, what you should do. And for 19.99, you can buy their course, and and it's all of these voices, and not everyone's always trying to tell you something. Sometimes people are they're just opinionated, and they think they know who you should be. And you're right. And so those types of disciplines, that even in the midst of the noise, even in the midst of chaos, that allows you to find that center, to hear that voice, and to focus on the things. Well, kind of going back to our other conversation of what is valuable, who am I to be, um, who am I becoming, and am I staying true to that? Am I staying aligned with those types of things?
So, does that mean that we need to have this first on track for ourselves before we can lead people? Or can we already take people along with us? There are no shortcuts, but what we have pioneered, we want, just if we think of our own children, we don't want them to go, we want them to learn the same lessons, but we don't want them to go through all the trouble that we have gone through. And as a leader, I think it's the same thing. You've pioneered the way. You don't want them to do the same stuff again. You want them to,
Hmm.
accelerate to where you are, take over, and go first in the next stage.
I definitely think there has to be an element of that. I have a very I have a very simple concept of leadership. Over all the years and all of the leadership training that I've been a part of, and all the books that I've read, and all of the stuff that I have ingested as it relates to leadership, there's just two things for me that it comes down to being leadership. Leaders they're not going to be perfect, right? They're not going to be perfect at this, but there's two things. Leadership for me comes down to one word, and that's influence. If a person has influence with somebody else, then that means they have the opportunity to shape a thought, shape a direction, shape a decision. And to me, that's leadership. And that's where, everybody really, when they say everybody's a leader, everybody is, because everybody has influence with somebody. And somebody says, well, how do you know if you're a leader? And I say, look to see if anybody's following. I mean, that's the easiest way to know if you're acting in that leadership role. So number one, I look at influence, and number two, um, is the thought that a leader, and this goes to the whole destination thing, a leader does not have to have arrived at the end goal in order to lead people there. They just need to be a step or two ahead. And they have to have tested the footing. They had to see where the dangers are, where the obstacles are. And sometimes it's slow. This goes back to my time in the Marine Corps, where oftentimes when you're going from point A to point B, nobody's been there before. But the people leading the way are simply a few steps ahead of the people that are following them. And they're relying upon that feedback, and the direction of hey, we've hit this, we got to go this way, or hey, minefield, let's backtrack, whatever it is. Um, so I think if a person is conscious of the influence that they have, and if they are working their best to for the benefit of the people that they're leading, to forage that way forward, then I think yes. And I guess I say this because I had struggled with leadership for a long time, constantly caught up in my imperfections, and the fact and the what's it called, when you feel like a fraud, right? When it's like, I don't know why I'm leading these people. I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
There's a phrase for that, and it's escaped me, but this helps me get past all
Well, you're not a fraud because you're not selling it for 19.99.
that.
So, but I think there is something in this, and I love that phrase. Everyone is a leader. Your choices matter and influence
Yeah.
the people around you. So leading and giving people choices, and the first one that follows your leadership should be you. Leadership starts with self leadership. So you
Yes.
have your first follower. But in the masterminds and in the coaching, I've noticed, and I recognize with myself as well, but it's always easier when someone else is struggling with it. That's the value of peers.
Hmm.
It just opens your eyes. Someone else mentions it, gives you feedback, and you think, oh yeah, I share that blind spot with you. And that was the duality between I'm pioneering as a leader and want to be 2-3 steps ahead, not much more. That is enough. At the other end, I long for a map. I need to navigate my journey as a leader. The people, I have to guide them, but I need a map. And we went a bit deeper into that, and we came to this well, not a conclusion, but it was more like something that gave peace in the whole debate. And that came down to the fact, like, maybe you're navigating and pioneering without a map, and through your self-reflection, that should result in a map for
Hmm.
the other people to come
Hmm.
to the point where you are at. Because you cannot pioneer with a map. You know, the pioneers
Yes.
write the map in the self-reflection, in the calibration phase. But we still want that. Probably it's the search for a little bit of comfort amidst that we recognize we don't need it as a pioneer, but we're human, so we need it a
Oh,
little bit.
pioneering is exhausting. Leading is, I mean, when you're leading in that type of an environment, it's exhausting. I mean, absolutely exhausting. But to your point, where you talk about your pioneering is what creates the map for those who are following. That to me comes down to for me, what is one of the absolute foundational concepts in leadership is authenticity, authenticity or credibility, because that builds trust.
Yeah,
And let me tell you something. People may be walking where you're walking, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're leading them. It's the people who see your credibility, your authenticity, and that generates trust within them. Because the ultimate test is when you say, "Hey, we're going to jump off this cliff together." Do they go with you? Right? Do they trust you? Do they trust you? No. And that's when you really know if people are following.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And the word that comes to mind is your integrity.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
probably even more important than your credibility, because you don't know where we are going all the time. You're just ahead, and then your
Right.
integrity builds the trust. And yeah, but you could feel a little bit lonely in that place. And there we go again. Embrace the loneliness as a leader, as a
That's
pioneer, a
it.
forerunner, and
Yeah.
don't make it an excuse for isolation. But it can be a lonely place. But just imagine a summit you climb. A summit is a very small place. It's not a crowded place.
And it's not that type of leadership isn't everybody's type of leadership, right? There's the pioneering leadership. uh, For whatever reason, when I was formed in my mother's womb, I was made genetically to have a certain uh, uh, perspective in my life where I thoroughly enjoy the challenge of forging paths. I love that challenge. And there are some people who are tremendous leaders, but they're not summit leaders. They're leaders of people in different ways. And this goes back, I think, ultimately to what you've been talking about is your authentic self. It's
Yeah,
that leading according to who you are, and kind of what I was saying, and not according to how somebody else leads.
yeah, yeah. Well, how do we wrap this podcast up? Like, what are the key takeaways?
Well, I for me, it was really really important when you brought the idea back. When we started talking about destination addiction, and you brought the idea back to the difference between the destination as an actual place to arrive versus something that guides us, that helps us understand our purpose and our journey and all those types of things. To me, that is a really important concept for me to always, be reminded of, um, knowing that that journey, uh, and our purpose and our integrity and the people that we do this with really, really is way more important than this idea of arriving somewhere. Because, like you said, once you get there, well, then what? Well, now
Yeah,
you have to find another destination to get to, and that's not the right way, or not the best way to probably live our 85 plus years on this planet.
that's true. That I think that's really important. And authentic leadership is, besides authentic, it also means that your version of leadership is unique. So you
Hmm.
can be a pioneer, and maybe you're not a pioneer. So let's figure out what. Not I would don't want to talk about the type of leadership. It's not there, because there we go again. 16
Yep.
boxes, 16 archetypes, and then do I meet the expectation? Now,
Yeah.
there are probably 9 billion boxes, so a few are still empty for newborns, but because it's unique. You're made unique calling, unique blueprint. So there is a unique group of people who you give a smile while having a smile on your face yourself. As so the ultimate goal of a calling is, I think, find the people that by having a smile yourself, you give them a smile as an outcome.
Yeah.
And with smile, I mean, well-being, fulfillment. So a materialized, manifested way of influence, or whatever you want to call it. It's not, again, it's not a place, it's a perspective, it's a
Right.
focal point of just maximizing your blessing for others.
Mhm. And this is why I think, what you're doing and the way you're going about it and the message that you're bringing out is really important, because everybody out there wants to sell the 16 boxes. You want to engage people and help them be envisioned by their authentic self and to be who they are. And for me, I look at it, escape the toxicity of comparison.
Yeah.
Be you. And anyway, that's why
Yeah.
I think what you're doing is and your message is really important for people.
Thank you for joining the podcast, or the show, if we can
Yeah.
call it. And for everyone who have listened to the end, I promise you, the story continues with Darin. But if you can't wait for that, and you feel triggered, or you feel something resonated in our dialogue, please connect. Don't waste the trigger. Connect. Be serious about your personal development as a leader, your personal growth, your authenticity. Just connect with businessrevivalist.com/connect, or through the channels that you've seen or heard the podcast, and just connect and have a short chat with Darin or with me, because we need peers. We are not alone, but it's our unique leadership journey. Darin, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I'm
I always
looking
love
forward.
our conversations.
Yeah, let's dig a bit deeper next time again. Let
Yeah, let's
people
do it.
dig. Take care. Bye bye.
All right, bye.